So what better time for Politics Monday with Tamara Keith of NPR and Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report. Let's start by talking about Donald Trump and Ben Carson, who it appears are now about to go after each other because, and let's take a look at the poll numbers, which explains why all of a sudden they're tied. Or I should say, Ben Carson is surging in Iowa. The latest Des Moines Register poll has him at 28%, Donald Trump at 19%, and in New Hampshire, the latest CBS poll has him at Donald Trump at 38% and Carson at 12%. But Donald Trump, Amy, when he's asked about these polls, you know, he likes to talk about polls.
Loves talking about the polls.
He now thinks that the polls, especially the one in Iowa where he's trailing, might be wrong.
Well, of course, because how could he possibly not be in first place? Look, I think we are now at sort of the new stage here in this campaign where we know we still have a very strong group of Republican primary voters looking for an outsider. They liked Trump earlier this summer. As we've moved on into the fall, you can already start to feel that he may have, reality show lingo here, jumped the shark a little bit. He's starting to wear a little bit thin.
I've heard this before,
I know.
Amy.
Hey, listen, here's what I will say to you.
Yes.
This isn't indicative of everything. But sitting in, both looking at data from Iowa, listening to some Republican voters in a focus group last week, they still like Donald Trump. Let's be very clear. He still has a very important place in this primary field. But what you can start to hear from voters, from Republican primary voters, is I don't know about the temperament. I don't know if I trust him in that job. Hence the rise of Ben Carson, who's the exact opposite in temperament.
Let's talk about Ben Carson's temperament. Very calm. He will admit to you he's a very calm person, which of course is what Donald Trump was talking about. But he said some very strong things this weekend. He said that abortion is like slavery. He has been very definitive in his conservative views. Do people like him? I mean, what explains, I guess, the surge in Iowa?
I think that a lot of people who you talk to about why they like Ben Carson actually like that he's quiet, that he's not this bomb thrower. Though the interesting thing is that a lot of the things he says, some of the analogies he makes to Nazism and some other things are pretty inflammatory, but he says it very quietly.
People kind of agree with his analogies,
a doctor
too.
voice. Yes, and there have been some numbers out there showing that people agree with what he's saying.
Republican primary voters, too.
Yeah, Republican,
right.
And we are talking about Republican primary voters. We're also talking in Iowa about a state that is heavily evangelical in the primary, and he is appealing to that sort of he's a very religious person.
Let's talk about Jeb Bush, because the last time Donald Trump accused someone of being low energy, it kind of worked, and Donald Trump and Jeb Bush has seen the altitude going out of his balloon ever since. Is he pulling back, or is he just reorganizing himself?
It is remarkable, I think, in this race, not so much that there's an outsider energy fueling these two candidates, Carson and Trump. What I think is the most remarkable thing on the Republican side is the vacuum on the so-called establishment side. That no candidate, we thought it was going to be Jeb Bush, he hasn't lived up to expectations. And no one else has been able to sort of get in that lane as the front runner on the establishment side to match up against the front runner on the non-establishment side. So Jeb Bush, apparently they spent the weekend in Houston with big donors trying to assure them that everything's fine, we got this all under control. But it's really clear that the problem for Jeb Bush is, one, he hasn't been a particularly strong candidate, and number two, that he has a message that is not the right message for this moment. He's an establishment candidate who's talking about his record and his accomplishments as governor, when Republican primary voters want an outsider and somebody who's going to shake up the system.
So obviously there are other Republicans who see an opportunity here. Among them, say, Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio.
Yes, and Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are going for sort of different people. But in the betting markets, Marco Rubio is on the rise. Marco Rubio in these markets of people who sort of look at the odds in a sort of outsider way, his stock has risen. He is now higher than Jeb Bush. And he has been building an organization. The same thing, very much true with Ted Cruz, who has an organization. He has people text in, and he even has an app. He is very serious about building an organization, and as things start to settle out and and his plan is, as things settle out and Donald Trump loses some of that, those people will go to Ted Cruz.
Let's talk about the Democrats. They big weekend. You remember in 2007, Barack Obama went to the Jefferson-Jackson Day dinner in Des Moines, broke out, and next thing you know, he had overwhelmed Hillary Clinton and won Iowa. Did anybody break out this weekend?
No, this was not.
This isn't 2007.
This was not 2007. There wasn't the breakout. But listen, there was a change, and you saw in Bernie Sanders that night on Saturday night in Des Moines a more pointed criticism of Hillary Clinton than we've seen before. Now, he still didn't use her name,
which you're not allowed to, I think, at this dinner.
Yeah, but that's probably true. So it was it was subtle. But what he was saying, what his message is, not only I'm the candidate that is talking about income inequality and making that the centerpiece of my campaign, but I was there first on issues that are important to progressives, and I've been there when it's not convenient. Iraq, Defense of Marriage Act, and on trade.
And Hillary Clinton responded following him by throwing her arms around Barack Obama and saying, I'm the Democrat's Democrat.
Absolutely. She had people there with thunder sticks, and she learned her lesson from 2007, which was Barack Obama basically out-organized her and put on a better show, and she was not going to go into that without putting on quite a show. There was a sea of blue glow sticks for Hillary Clinton. She did make one remark that was like a little dig at Bernie Sanders, where she said, people say I'm shouting too much on guns, which is actually an issue that's sort of the toughest issue for Bernie.
Yeah.
Well, people often think women are shouting. It was sort of
lots of gender references.
Yeah, there was a lot. Hillary Clinton is definitely running as a woman in a way that she didn't last time around.